Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Tip of the Week. Now this week I want to take a step in a direction that's a little bit more in-depth and talk to you guys about what we call the reach behind. Now the way that I'm going to show you how to do the reach behind is a way that makes use of some sophisticated compositing techniques. And therefore, this can only be done the way I'm going to show you in Animate Pro and Harmony. The scene file that I'm going to use today to show you this is a scene file from Harmony 9 that was created by Stacy, one of our trainers in-house here, who does a lot of really great work for us. For those of you who are using Animate Pro, you can follow along with a lot of the same concepts that I'm going to show you here. For those of you using Animate, it's going to be very difficult for you to do the reach behind the same way that I'm showing them today. So there are other ways of doing the reach behind with Animate, but maybe I can try and think about those as I go along and as I do the presentation. So let's get started. So let's take a look now at this scene, and when we're animating the reach behind, the first step to do is to actually complete the animation with the arm in front the way that you want it to look. And then afterwards you can go back and you can adjust what happens to put the arm behind the back. But it's good to get the full flow, to get the right timing, the ease, and everything right before you go ahead and stick the arm behind. And let's just play this through its speed here so we can check out what it's doing. So you see you've got a little bit of ease going on there. And one thing that you'll notice about Stacy's work is that he likes to work with stop motion keyframes, and he likes to keyframe everything out by hand. And this is something that I'd like to do another tip and trick about a little bit later on. And truthfully, there's no right or wrong way of animating when it comes to that sort of thing, because you know, some people prefer the interpolation because it's faster, but some people like the organic feel of doing the keyframes by hand. And Stacy likes to make use of the interpolation to create his keys, and then he sets everything to stop motion keys and makes adjustments on his own. But that's another tip and trick for us for later. So let's talk now about the reach behind. So the first step is to get the animation looking the way that you want it to look. Now that we've got the animation looking the way that we want it to look, it's time for us to think about how do we get the arm behind. So let's figure out what frame we want it to go behind on. We probably want it to go behind at about this frame right here, because it's then going to go behind the body. So once we select the frame where we want it to go behind, if I just select my rig and I parent up to the peg that's controlling the the forearm, actually what I'll do is I'll just go to the next frame over just to do it more obvious. If I select my forearm rig and the forearm peg rather, and then I use my Alt and I need to make sure my focus is around the camera view. Do that all the time. Okay. Make sure my Alt and up arrow shortcut is going to send it behind. What happens is if you are working with a nicely patched joint here, it's going to move your patch as well, and you'll get this kind of ugly line work, and that's not going to do the trick for us. That's something that is the whole point of doing this demonstration today, to talk about how we can avoid having that happen. Of course, if you try to do it at the shoulder level, then you're going to move the shoulder as well, which is probably not what you want either. You want the shoulder in front, but you want the arm from the bottom to go behind. And if you use that simple shortcut Alt and up arrow to move it behind, then you get the problem of the line work not looking the way we want it to look. Okay, so now that we've figured out that we will not be able to just nudge this thing in the way that we want to, let's find another way of doing it. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my arm group, which contains the various drawings in my arm, and I'll examine a little bit what the artwork looks like. So I've got here several different drawing layers that represent the lower arm. And if I go in my drawing view and I check out what's in these drawing layers, then I've got the completed arm, the completed lower arm there in the line art layer, and I've got my patch, or the what I'm using to cover up the lines, in the color art layer. And then in my underlay layer, I've just got everything copied under there, so that I have a copy of everything in there. And I actually just want to make sure that I've also got the lines covered or colored in the underlay layer, and this is something that I think I forgot to do. So I'm just going to come in here and fix those lines. And the reason why I need to have the lines on the underlay layer will come clear as I go along here in the presentation. So I want my underlay layer to contain the complete artwork, the line art layer to contain also the complete artwork in this case, and then the color art layer just has the fill for the patch. And so now let's go back to our network and see that I've also got a copy of the exact same layer going underneath. And one thing that's important to realize is that when you do a copy paste using Control-C, Control-V, or Command-C, Command-V in the network, what it does is it creates a clone. And what's very interesting about creating a clone in this case is that since these two, and I can tell that they were copied and pasted because they have the same name, but I can also check where the functions are pointing. But what's really interesting about doing a clone is when you swap one drawing, it's going to swap all those drawings at the same time. So this is something that is very useful because you can use the clones to do different things. So if I look in the camera view, I've got that arm layer sandwiched with the upper arm layer, and the way that it's sandwiched is I've got on top here the copy of that lower arm that I've got selected. If I take a look inside the layer properties by clicking on that yellow options box and I go into the drawing tab, you can see here that I've got the color art only showing on this clone. And if you remember when we were in the drawing view and we looked at the artwork, the color art had only the fill without the line. So what we're doing is we're sandwiching that fill on top of the upper arm, and then we're putting the completed artwork underneath the arm. So if we look at the second clone, layer properties, you'll see this one now is showing the line art instead of showing the color art, and the line art had the completed artwork on it. So this is how we can really control what we're doing on the different layers and sandwiching those in between. And then you can see the upper arm layer going in between the color art and the line art. So this brings me now to how can we deal with this situation of wanting to be able to have that reach behind work, but we want that joint to still work really well. And I'm going to now use a third clone. I'll copy and paste one of these clones. It doesn't really matter which one. I can just do a Command-C, Command-V, or Control-C, Control-V. And then I'll take this clone and I'm going to put it underneath everything. So it's just right at the bottom. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take it straight out. I'm going to take it to the multi-port out, all the way outside. And you need to also make sure, if you want the clone to follow the same animation as the rest of the clones, they need to also be all connected to the same peg, because remember, we're animating on pegs in this case. So now I've got the peg layer connected to the lower arm on all three of these clones, and I've got this third clone just going outside. Now if I look at the outside of this group, this is where now I can take that copy, and sorry, this is left over from before, so let me get rid of that one. I can take that copy that I've put to the multi-port out, and I can do something with it. So what I want to do with that drawing layer, which is the lower arm here, I can take it and I can put it underneath everything. except my color card, because the color card is defining the background in my scene here. So if I take everything and I put it underneath everything, then what this is going to do now is it's going to represent the lower arm that's behind the body. So hopefully this isn't confusing you yet, but what I've got now, if I take a look in my group, is I've got a couple of copies of that lower arm that are going on top of the body, which is going out this way. And I've also got a clone of the arm that's going underneath the body down here. But so far, I haven't done anything that's going to allow me to actually, isolate that layer that's going behind. So there's two things that I want to do here. I want to go inside my lower arm group, and I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to use the underlay layer now to define what's going to show for this clone. And then what I can do is I can use the underlay to contain the drawing that I'm interested in having. So if I go back and I take a look at the drawing that's in this drawing on the underlay layer has the completed artwork. So that's going to work really nicely. If I look at what's going on with the other layers, with the lower arm and the lower arm color art and the lower arm line art, those ones have the completed artwork in them as well. And the problem with that is if they have the completed artwork, the arm is still going to show in front. Okay, so I was just saying that I've got the lower arm copies with the line art and the color art going in front of the body, and then I've got the lower arm copy for the underlay going underneath the body. But this isn't going to help me unless I actually cut the piece of the arm that's in front, because I want to hide that one. And the thing is, though, that I probably don't want to ruin the copy that I've already got here or the drawing that I've already got here. So I want to create a new drawing to do this. And so with that drawing layer selected, I can just sort of search for it down in my timeline. And I did that with the O shortcut. Shift-O sometimes works as well, so just depending on whichever one you want. And I'll go to the frame where I want this to switch. And on this frame now, I can create a new drawing just by duplicating the drawing. And because these are clone layers, you'll notice when I duplicate the drawing on one clone, it duplicates it on all clones, because they're all sharing the same artwork. So now if I check out what the artwork is looking like here, what I want to do is I want to use my cutter tool to cut out some part of the arm that I don't want to see on the upper layers. But I do need to leave some of it there, because if we look at the joint, I still need to have this piece at the top that's going to cover up the lines for the joint, or else it will look bad. So, but with my line art layer selected, I can just select the piece of artwork that I want to delete, and then I can just hit delete. And I will do the same thing on the color art layer. I'll select the part of it that I want to delete, and then I'll hit delete. And do you see right away when I do that, now the arm is behind. And it's showing up behind because it's using now that version or that copy that's going behind the body that has the completed artwork on it, and then the copies that are in the front that don't have anything showing now are not going to show up. So that's how that works. And then of course the last step in this process is at the point when that hand is coming over the body, you also want to go ahead and turn the hand off. Now, I recommend not turning it to an exposure of 0, because what happens when you do that is you get a gap in your timeline, and that can sometimes be tricky when you're trying to copy and paste things and move things around. It's much better if you can instead have a version of that hand that's an empty drawing. It doesn't contain anything, it's just an empty drawing. And now if we take a look at what's going on, we can see that we've got the reach behind working. So as I zoom out there, I can see he's sticking his arm behind his back. So in this case, I'm not animating the position of anything. I'm simply animating the exposure of the arm. But what's really nice about this is you can click to select the arm, and you can just change the exposure once without having to change it on 3 different layers because they're all clones. So you can just change it once and off you go. So that's how we do the reach behind. Just to reiterate, in your network view, you want to have 3 different copies of your lower arm. You'll have one clone of your lower arm that has only the color art selected, one copy that has the line art selected, and one copy that has the underlay selected. And you want to make sure the underlay is going underneath your body and that the color art and line art are going in front of your body in your regular composite here. And that way, when you swap the exposure, you can just swap the exposure when you want the arm to go behind the back. So hopefully that was okay and wasn't too in-depth or too complicated. Let me know how that was, and if you want me to go back and explain in more detail, I can do another tip and trick or another tip of the week about how to actually rig the arm joint, because that might not be something that you've gone over, and rigging the arm joint is something that is a good thing to know how to do. So let me know if you want to see that. So actually, before I leave today, I remembered that I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about how you would do it in Animate. And this is one of the reasons why using something like Animate Pro or Harmony makes your life a lot easier to do animation, because having this built-in compositing gives you the chance to use these techniques that you just can't with a layer-based system. So there is not going to be an easy way to do it in Animate like you can in Animate Pro. So the way to do it in Animate is you can clone the layers, and you'll have one clone that will be a child inside of the group and one clone that's going to be sort of lower down in the layer structure. And you can try to repeat exactly what I did here with Animate Pro, but it's going to be a lot trickier to do that. Another option is to just have 2 copies or 2 duplicates instead of trying to do the clone thing. And then you can have the copy of the arm that's going to be in front and the copy of the arm that's going to be in back. And instead of swapping them both at the same time like you can with a clone, you can always go back and swap the exposure on each drawing individually. So that would be a thing to try. I think you're just going to have to experiment with different techniques to see what's going to work the best for you on the reach behind for Animate, but I think probably a copy is going to work a little bit easier than a clone there, because you don't have the same level of depth. And you also in Animate don't have the 4 different sublayers like you do in Animate Pro and Harmony. You don't have the color art, line art, and underlay and overlay. You just, if you're using Animate Advanced Art mode, you can get color art and line art, but you will never be able to get all 4. So it's better to do a copy of the arm that's going to be in front and a copy that will be behind, but you will have to swap individually the exposure. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of what to try when you're working out in Animate.